welcome to RIP Sleep. My name is Travis. I am joined by my co-host Robert. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Cool. So this entire show is just going to be us talking about horror things. Both of us are really big horror fans. Robert and I have both also studied movies. I studied the audio and theatrical sides, and Robert studied the video, cinematography, and directing sides. So we can kind of give our own opinions on the movies and how we can develop our own theories, stories, and whatnot from the original base material that the movies give. Today's episode, Robert can say what we're talking about so that we split this up semi evenly.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Well, I believe we're specifically going to be talking about the Terrifier trilogy with a couple background knowledge on some of the other products that and productions that Damien Leone, is that how you pronounce his last name?
I'm
Leone?
pretty sure it's pronounced Leon.
I'm going to refer to him just as Damien from here on out because I have a hard time pronouncing that name.
Fair.
But, so we'll be talking about Terrifier 1, 2, and 3 with a little bit of knowledge that comes a bit in here from the past products that he created that also contain the characters specifically of Art the Clown.
That is the official spoiler warning. We will be talking about different things, the thematic elements of Terrifier 3, as well as the kill scenes from the movie, at least a couple of them. So, spoiler warning to anybody that has not watched the movie, we will be talking about stuff from the third movie.
Yeah.
So, Robert,
But
you can go ahead and kick that off of how you want to
that's fair
start
point.
this.
Well, I think a best thing to go back is kind of give a little bit of history on the Terrifier series and kind of specifically where the character of Art the Clown originated from. Because Art is kind of like this brainchild of Damien. He was debuted in the very first short and the very first thing that Damien has directed himself, which was the
The Ninth
Ninth
Circle.
Circle,
Yep.
and that released in 2008. I think he filmed it in 2006. Um, and one of the really neat things I found out about that is he, instead of like just going on like a camcorder at the time, because like digital filmmaking products at that time weren't nearly as like, they weren't the cheapest option, but they're probably a bit, I think they're a bit more around. But he decided to actually film the short on 35 millimeter film. So this wasn't digital. This man went out and shot a short, like 9 minute um film on 35 millimeters of film, which even at that even with that short of a film, that can get quite expensive just because if you had to do any retakes and anything, that you physically have to go out and get the material to refilm.
That's true. Because, like, audio, like, for like the analog versions of recording stuff, that's like a lot more that goes into it. I know that like the analog version of recording things for the audio aspect, it causes a lot of different troubles and issues that people can come across, because recording audio on analog is not that simple. It is a lot more difficult than a lot of people seem to realize that it is.
Yeah, because you at that time, there's no equipment out there that for like analog filming, which those cameras never had built-in like audio picking up devices. So not only is the camera one purchase in the film, but um, the audio production, the audio supplies themselves is another um thing you have to purchase to create something with that.
Yeah, and so like going back to what you were saying about the Ninth Circle, so Damien's idea of Art the Clown actually spawned before that short. It was actually like this idea that he had of a clown on a bus with a lady, and he was sitting across from this woman, like mocking her and like kind of joking around, but then becoming more sinister and like more aggressive towards her. And then in the Ninth Circle, when Art is first introduced as a character, he's introduced as instead of sitting across on a bus, they're in like what looks like a subway station.
Yeah.
And he's like still mocking her and doing other things, and then it goes into him like drugging her and injecting her with this like milky substance stuff, and that's just like overall it's creepy and it's weird, and I don't mess with the milky substance that he injects into people's bodies, because that's not even the only time that he does it. Because he does it in the first and second movie. I don't remember him doing it in the third, but I feel like he probably did.
Yeah. I think the funny thing about that is like all the effects and stuff Damien had to do himself. Because I also read the specific article that you referenced where he was talking with Fangoria back in 2013, and they asked him where he came up with the idea as art of with art as a character, um, and kind of like, and he said that he basically talked about hey he couldn't remember exactly where he got the idea, but the potential of clowns being very scary, and the idea that there's a clown that has more tools to his disposal, including milky liquids.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that was another thing that I read, was that like one of the big reasons that Damien made Art the Clown was because he felt as though the horror industry was lacking a clown slasher, because at the time the only really prominent like clown, villain, that's what you choose to take, was Pennywise, and it was Tim Curry's Pennywise, the original one. So, and I know that Art is like, he's supposed to be the complete opposite of Pennywise, where, Pennywise is bright and colorful and talks a lot and has hair and whatnot, whereas Art the Clown is bald, he's completely black and white, and he does not speak at all, which honestly, in my opinion, massively adds to the creep factor of Art the Clown.
and that comes into another idea where like with Pennywise, he's also more than just a clown. Like the being that is it takes multiple shapes and forms, whereas we only see this one version of Art, um, who every now and then he finds it quite funny just to put on a, I don't want to say disguise, but he wants to put on a new outfit. Like in the for like the first movie when he basically um skins the breasts and the hair and the like the entire scalp off the one crazy cat lady. Uh, I think there's that, and then I don't. Did he ever like change his outfit up much at all through the other two movies?
So in Terrifier 2 that I can remember, I mean, he did the iconic scene with Sienna in the Halloween store with the like googly like spring glasses. So like he did that. And then I think he did like one or two other really small things, but never really like changed his outfit. But then in Terrifier 3, obviously it like takes place during the Christmas time, so it's, he's in a Santa Claus outfit for a fair amount of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, that is fair. He does dress up as jolly old Saint Nick.
Yeah. But like, so going to Terrifier 1, and so like obviously Terrifier 1, it was filmed on a very low budget. Like it was filmed with almost nothing. Like actually before
He
even
actually,
Terrifier 1, we have to go to the Terrifier short that was made.
yeah, he made the short, and the thing with the short was I believe he released that up on YouTube at the time.
Yeah, remember when
Um,
you could release stuff on YouTube without being demonetized?
oh god, like yeah, that's crazy to talk about the difference in time. That there was a product that he was able to create and put it out onto YouTube, and this was uncensored at the time. I don't think there was anything that he held back in that one. Even with the budget he had, he got quite creative, and that's another one where in that short he did all the prosthetics and like everything himself for it.
Yeah, and that was
And
that was before David Edward Thornton, the guy that plays Art the Clown. That was before he started playing him, because that was
yeah,
at the time. I'm pretty sure it was somebody that Damien knew
yeah,
that
it was
like took up the
um
mantle of Art the Clown for a period of time
yeah.
during that short.
The actor who played Art in the shorts and tech and within the movie All Hallows Eve was a Mike Gianelli, and he was basically a friend of Damien, and he was offered the part originally to go play in the first Terrifier movie, but he turned it down because he just didn't like the long time it took to get in and out of the art makeup and outfit. He didn't like Damien also likes to shoot apparently um in like the cold like end of fall into winter. It's like before the snowfall really hits. He likes to do that, and apparently the costume itself was quite thin. So
I
there
mean,
was very little
like
warmth you could gain from it.
if you look at the costume, it does look very thin. I
Yeah.
mean, like so. Okay, so since for I know that before All Hallows Eve came out, the entire thing was that somebody, I can't remember who it is, but he wanted to come out with a anthology horror movie to talk about the different to like show different aspects of horror, and he was looking through YouTube to try to find stuff to do,
That
and
was yeah, that was Jesse Badgett, producer.
yes,
He found the 20-minute Terrifier short on YouTube, and he approached Damien to direct and put like his own part of it. But the original idea for All Hallows Eve was for it to be multiple directors, kind of in the same vein of like how the VHS movies work. It was different directors doing their own
yeah,
short
and
bits and
then
stuff.
and then after some time, Damien actually convinced him to let him direct the entire film, and then from that it spawned that Art became somewhat of a lesser known because like All Hallows Eve. From what I've found and what I know, All Hallows Eve really isn't that it's a prominent movie, but not as prominent
Yeah,
as other anthology horrors, like you said, of the VHS movies
yeah, like
or like
VHS.
Trick or Treat.
Yeah, it's like when you can't pretend them, you don't. Not many people think about it, and I think it kind of skips over everybody's mind because of like, because I would say like Terrifier 1, it didn't launch Art the Clown into like the cultural phenomenon that he is now.
No,
I
by
would say
far,
that
I would
definitely
say
happened
Terrifier
at
2.
2.
Yeah,
Yeah, Terrifier
because
2 is definitely where that happened.
yeah, because then we jump from All Hallows Eve to the first Terrifier movie that was released in 2016, and the first Terrifier movie it was filmed on an extremely small budget. Like
Yeah, he
the
he he went for like some indie backing. I think it was on Indiegogo is where he initially started trying to get the funding for the movie. But it was at that when it was a producer trying to think of his name now. Uh
oh gosh, from the first one.
Phil Falcone. Phil Falcone.
Phil Falcone. He ended up sponsoring the entire movie and all he asked was he got a producer credit out of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so from Terrifier 1, from all of the gruesome killings, which one like in your opinion was your favorite kill from that movie, and which one was the worst kill from that movie?
Uh when it comes to the worst of the kills, I think they all had pretty well practical effects that put into them. But I think the one that stays in my mind the least is the one dude who kind of walks in because he called the night janitor that was on service there, and he kind of you just see him kind of like cut off the guy's head without much else. Like the guy's living through most of it screaming, but I think that one is just like it's the weakest. I don't want to say it's the worst. I don't think there's a individual terrible kill um that we see on screen. The only I guess the other option would be I don't think we get to see um the crazy cat lady's death per se. We just kind of I think we get alluded to that she kind of bleeds out because she was scalped and then had her literal entire chest removed.
Yeah, and honestly, thinking about it, I agree that the security guard that came in, that or the janitor guy, whatever he was, that came in to find his other janitor buddy. I agree that that has to be the weakest of them, and purely because I forgot that happened. Well, I was trying to think of like what was the worst kill or like in my opinion like the weakest. All I could think about was like the janitor himself, like the his character's name was Mike. I thought that his kill was kind of weak, mostly for the fact of like, he went through, somehow having music so loud that he doesn't hear people screaming, to then getting hit on the head with a hammer, and then still
Was it?
survives,
Oh
comes
yeah, he
back
does get hit in
and
the hammer
like goes
first.
to get Victoria out of there and away from Art, just to get his ass handed to him, and then his head stomped in.
Yeah. Here's the thing though. The reason why I didn't put that one lower than the guy getting his head cut off was because I think we rarely see, like in any slasher film, like anytime you see someone like get stomped on and died, it usually you see the frame of them like looking up. You're looking like, kind of through the perspective of the killer. You see him looking up, the boot or the foot is getting lifted, and then you switch to the like to a different perspective of like the victim looking up at the killer, and you see the boot come down without any like footage of the actual like
The actual
squashing of the
kill, yeah.
head. Yeah, and that's something that I did like about that kill, and the funny idea that the guy got before that he survived the hammer hit. He then got hit over the head with the fire extinguisher before being knocked to the ground.
Yeah, like I enjoyed the kill. I love the shot. I love seeing the boot go through his skull, and honestly, the sound effects for it are beautiful. They are gorgeous sound designs for it. But it was just the fact of he went through so much, and then he got stepped on and killed. And I was like, I
Yeah.
feel like there was a different way that he should have died, or could have died, not should have. And I just feel like it was a little lackluster, because like it kind of built up that like it was going to be final guy, final girl, but then he just gets killed instantly. The
Yeah.
only other like death from that movie that I'm like, like I get it, but like, why? It's kind of like Art killing himself at the end of the movie, like him shooting himself. Like, it's messed up, and like, holy crap, like that is not okay. But like, goddamn, really?
I think it's kind of funny because his reactions is like he almost has that like Steve Urkel, did I do that kind of expression before pulling it off?
You know what? That
Because
is fair. So then
uh,
what would be your favorite one from there? I'll go first for favorite for this one. Honestly, there's two that come to mind, and they are just so prevalent in my brain at all times. One is Dawn, the girl that gets hung upside down, and he saws her in half from her private parts to her head. That just
yeah,
lives in my head and haunts my dreams, because it's a mortifying image, because Art has to have supernatural strength to be able to do that. Like, he saw it wasn't like he went down like one, like a side. He went straight down the center. He sawed through each individual vertebrae and halfway through her skull.
and it's not even just that. It's the fact that he also did it with a handsaw. He didn't use a chainsaw. He wasn't like it wasn't a simple like as people thought it was gonna be. It was he pulled out probably the most impractical way to cut somebody in half.
Especially for the fact of it looked like the saw was about to fall apart. Like, the handle was taped together, the saw blade was rusted. Like, it looked like it wouldn't be sharp enough to do that, and then he just does it.
Yeah, it is. Ugh. I would say the only other one that comes close to that, not even like the fact of it being gory, but I will say Terrifier 1 did give me it gave me one of the better kills where a gun is used in in a slasher film. Because most of
Tara's.
the time, yeah, because most of the time when you see a gun being used in a horror movie, specifically when the killer uses it kind of becomes a little. It's not nearly as interesting because there's only so many ways you can shoot somebody to make it look pretty, to make it look brutal and make it more savage. Um, and then they kind of instead of being savage, I guess in this way, it's still savage, but it's kind of like wild coyote type of shit, you know. Art's getting his ass kicked, handed to him. He's getting fucking beat around, and who you think is supposed to be the final girl in this movie? uh, wasn't ready for when Art pulled out the Walmart blicky. Like, I don't think they never even alluded to him having it before. So you're not expecting him to pull it out from his from his ankle
Yeah, and I completely
boot.
agree with that because like the first time I watched the movie, like during that scene, I like honestly, I was raging. I was raging at Tara because I'm like, what are you doing? Keep hitting this man. Why are you trying to give him equal footing? Just keep hitting him with that board. And then he gets up and just pulls out the gun and just shoots her. And
Yeah.
like honestly, I was like, oh shit, holy crap, like that's insane. But then when the gun jams and he
Oh
looks
yeah,
so defeated because the
David
gun jammed, it just broke me. I started dying laughing.
David Howard Thornton he's such he's it's kind of like with like he's like a horror version of Jim Carrey, you know. He's able to emote so much through all the makeup and like prosthetists and everything that he brings he brings a bit more of like emotion to a character that you wouldn't surprise to have that much, you know, especially with all like the mime mimicry that Art's doing. His like specifically those facial reactions, him being sad when he shoots her, and then only a few moments later when he looks up, he still looks up sad and he sees the crazy cat girl and he switches it to the smile with the wrinkling finger like hi.
Hand wave type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was just like that one, that movie, like overall I really liked the first movie. I thought it was, it was a good like full introduction to Art the Clown instead of just like the little shorts that we had. But like, and then, All Hallows Eve, but like I felt like it gave more to his character and I really liked that.
Yeah. That and it's a much more traditional version it's a much more traditional and modern version of a grindhouse film, like those older like that you don't see often anymore because everything's become so much easier to film and make look at least a bit more professional that I think almost anybody can do it. I think there was a part of Damien that specifically made him go for that just
Yeah,
because
that
it
was what his like inspiration for how Art does his kills was the 1970s grindhouse kills.
yeah. The grindhouse kills, but specifically, I could also tell he was inspired by like the splatterpunk uh, movement in horror writing that happened in like I believe the 70s and 80s for books, because those ones are like those books in the day like the paperbacks from Hell and stuff. They've specifically had this like um, unapologetic, gruesome, no fucks kind of given body horror kills, and it was so detailed and nothing was left to the imagination even for a reader. Like they were very blank and forward to you, telling like, hey, this is what's happening, this person's getting chopped up.
Yeah.
And that's kind and that was like a big part of the counterculture at the time, and I feel like Damien understands that very well, because we see like blood in like bigger and popular horror movies. um the gores can be there, but Damien, he focuses on that. He leaves you there with nothing left to wonder. You see literal body parts ripped, guts are hanging out, and they're
Well,
on there for more than just seconds on the screen.
yeah, and I completely agree with that, especially for the fact of like like before Damien started directing, he was a special effects artist. So like all of his, you know, like he wanted to push that because he has experience and knowledge and know-how of like the special effects in horror movies and other movies in general, just to like push that forward and push it to the forefront so that it's really an understandable type thing.
Yeah, like, and especially for a movie where you're taking, I don't. He definitely had more help in this and with it when it came to the first Terrifier movie, but he definitely was leading all of it for the directing in that. I believe he actually has the credits for the special effects in the first one and the second one,
I
but I think the
believe
third
so.
one is. I believe he. I don't think he was put on like the special effects and makeup for the third movie at all.
So there's one other thing that I wanted to mention before we jump on to Terrifier 2. So uh so you sent me a video a couple days ago about like what like crimes art would be charged with of like by
Yeah, I
the
did.
end of these movies. So like I went through and
And
I watched through the video, and like by the end of the like, did you watch the whole thing, or was that just
I watched
something
the
that you
whole.
saw?
Oh no, I watched the whole thing, and it doesn't. I don't think I incorporated any of the crimes from the third movie.
No,
So
it didn't.
there.
It ended at the end of the second movie. But so I like broke these down. And so essentially by the end of the first movie, this man had 281 plus years in prison if he got arrested, and a 66,000 or $100 fine, which
Yeah,
is just for like all the different murders and killings and like defaming of property and like breaking and entering, burglary, like that kind of random stuff that he does. But like to think that like in one movie, like this man, he accrued over 281 years in prison. That's
yeah.
multiple life sentences.
I wasn't nearly as surprised from the life sentences, the amount of life sentences, as I was the fact that the fine felt too small.
The fine did feel really small, but I do have to give it credit. I enjoy the fact that it ends with 6,600.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just like, oh,
If anybody has any thoughts on it doesn't know what we're talking about, the Cinema Cop on YouTube, he makes videos out there for different fictional characters, and he kind of just goes over the crimes that they committed and how many years that lands them in prison, and or the fine that would charge them, and or both, depending on the
and this will
situation.
not be the only time that I talk about the Cinema Cop for this episode, because I broke it down to how many years he would have at the end of the second movie for just the second movie, and it is
Really?
so much worse than the first movie.
How
Like
many?
not
How
by a
many?
ton, but it is enough worse that like you really got to be like, holy crap.
Do you have a number amount for torture specifically in the first one here? Do you have that written down at all?
I don't, but I can get that really quick.
Yeah,
Uh,
because that is quite high. I think that's the most amount, the most charges he gets is through that video is the torture.
I believe so. Let me see if I
Yeah,
can. That he had a full breakdown at the end of the. Uh, so at the end of the video, this is including episode or Terrifier 1 and 2. He has 10 accounts of torture. So like, breaking that up, it's more than likely like 4 accounts in Terrifier 1 and 6 accounts in Terrifier 2, or the opposite direction. Honestly, I feel like Terrifier 2, it was less torture, and well, no, Terrifier 2, I feel like it was more torture.
there was definitely way more torture because I feel like now that we're going to the talk about the second one, actually before we go into the talk of the second one, there's a few more things I will say that um I did not like about the first one. It is definitely not my least favorite. We'll talk about we're going to talk about that later on how we would rank the three films.
Yeah.
Um, but I I just feel that the movie itself, although he was going for that that style, um, it almost borderlines with how the lighting is, and how like the exposure almost makes it feel like it looks like a porno. That's one thing that felt very. That's the one thing that kind of felt distracting throughout the entire movie. Other than that, is that the characters from the first movie, they all just kind of felt like they were there to die.
And that
They're
was something that Damien actually talked about at one point. He felt as though he should have developed the characters more in Terrifier 1, and he felt bad about that and not doing it, which is what spawned Terrifier 2 being more of a character driven story instead of killer driven.
Yeah. And that those are my only two big, I think, only two complaints I have for the first Terrifier movie. That that and the pizza in the beginning of the movie didn't look that good. So
The
I'm
pizza did kind of look like shit.
I'm just saying, if I was drunk, I don't think I was that pizza would help me out. That's
Hey,
all
you
I'm
want to know
saying.
what? That pizza might have looked like shit, but it wasn't a pizza and liquor store. So like you gotta equal it out.
I mean, I that's fair. That's fair. To be fair, we are in upstate New York. We the rules here are not nearly as fun as the rest of the United States.
That is true, even though the first Terrifier movie takes place in New York City, actually.
Uh,
I
yeah, it
found
does,
that out.
doesn't it?
So,
Hmm.
jumping to Terrifier 2, Robert, what what was something from Terrifier 2 that you absolutely despised? Like, let's start it off with that.
The fact that the majority of the other kills in the movie, except for one, was not very memorable. I feel like I can name less kills in the sequel movie because there was one really big one that I think that's by default going to become everybody's favorite if they watch
I
it.
think that there's one other kill that you're really forgetting about because I know which one you're talking about. I'll get into
And
that in a second. But so like for me, one thing that I despised about the Terrifier 2. So Terrifier 1 in its totality, I'm pretty sure it had how what was the runtime on Terrifier 1? It was an hour and 25 minutes, which
yeah,
it felt good. Terrifier 2 is a 2 hour and 18-minute movie. And
it is the
we don't
longest
yeah,
in the
it's the longest of the trilogy right now. Oh, well, not right now. It's the longest of the current trilogy, but it felt like we had to wait so long for a kill.
yeah. And I think this is where Damien was really trying to go directly into like some of the more character work. But I feel like it was I feel like it was him still trying to find that balance between character writing and and um the good stuff, the things that people go to watch the movie for.
That is true. Cuz I mean
It
to think about it, like Damien Leon, he wrote Terrifier 1, 2, and I believe he wrote all of 3 as well.
yeah,
Uh
he he
yeah,
he
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 wrote
wrote all
all
of them.
3 movies and I feel like Terrifier 1 gave us just the kill 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 with very little story. But then Terrifier 2 it gave us a lot of story with in my personal opinion not enough kill and gore in it. For movies that are like highly known as gore flicks and just straight up gory horror ass shit and like I just Terrifier 2 it didn't quite do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it I feel like everybody, other than before we talk about the big thing, the thing that I think 2 is most known for. Um
You mean the meme with art, right?
the meme listen, art this goes back to Howard Thornton being just so good at facial expressions. That just the simple act of him looking down and then back up with just a simple change of the ooh to the smile. It
It's so
it
good. It's so good. It's so memeable, and I absolutely adore it.
it's everywhere. It really is everywhere. But other than salt and bleach, which is what I will refer to that specific scene. I want to talk about a couple of the other kills first, I think, before we talk about that one,
Yeah, I'm completely
because
down for that.
because he did upgrade us from one blicky scene to two blicky scenes
That
this
was
film.
one that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the Sienna's mom's death.
Yeah, the boom. Well, I'll refer to that one as the boomstick blicky.
Yeah, like that death, like comparative to like a lot of Art's other kills, he always seems to have like a lot of or a fair amount of emotion tied into his death. Like he's fake laughing, he's giggling, he's smiling, he's got that big creepy smile with the dirty teeth and the blood-stained gums. But then like the kill for Sienna's mom, it felt cold. Like it was
Yeah,
just like straight hatred, just bang through the window, done. and it was just an insane shot.
Yeah, it's I think it's kind of funny almost because he's in the car. I think most people are expecting him to get out of the car and then possibly do something else to her, but instead, it takes the boomstick is hidden like just underneath the door, so that way as soon as like she wipes whatever was on the car, what was on the car again?
It was like shaving cream, eggs, toilet paper. He basically like defaced her car like kids do on Halloween to other people.
Yeah. I to be fair, when I saw a clip of it again, for some reason, I literally thought I Art just like busted a nut all over the car at one point. I saw a picture of it after watching the movie for the first time. Like, did this? And I'm like, it's not so far out of the spectrum for him to do this,
Yeah, to be
especially
fair,
for what he did to
in
the
the
bathroom
first
in the first
movie, he
movie.
did wipe his feces all over the bathroom.
Well, I thought he just busted over the car, and I was like, damn, he gets he somebody likes Hondas.
Oh my god. But so like that scene was crazy. And honestly, one other scene that I feel like I need to bring up, because I know that when you and I watched this movie together 2 weeks ago, like both of us, we winced in pain from this kill. The dude's name was Jeff. He was Sienna's friend's boyfriend. When he gets out of the car to go to the bathroom, and then Art just repeatedly stabs this man in his penis over and over again. Like, that is, oh my god, that is a brutal kill. And then he takes the dude's genitals and rubs them on the car to intimidate her friend. It is just, oh my god, it's so much, and a disturbing amount.
I feel like that was Damien's in film response to when people asked him if he hated women.
You know what? That is a solid accusation.
With how brutal I think the female kills get in, before we go even back to Salt and Bleach, the Saw kill from the first movie, and then how bad he what did he even do to the girl, the girlfriend to that dude who got stabbed in the dick?
Actually, I have a list of all of their kills. So
that's one that kind of blanks my mind, and I can't remember.
What was her name? Her name was Brooke. So he bludgeoned. It seemed like he was gonna bludgeon her to death with a spiked bat, but instead he threw acid on her face.
That's right. He turned her into a fucking human clay face.
Yeah, and then he took the club, battering her leg, breaking open her sternum, and Art rips out her heart at the end of that and eats it.
That's right. Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about, because when my brain goes to the kills in this movie, it goes to Salt and Bleach and the two Blicky scenes. Speaking of which, the Tommy gun.
Yes, the Tommy gun. Oh my gosh, the upgraded Blickies. It's so good. It's so good.
Like him just pulling out the Tommy gun. Art really is like the closest I think we're ever gonna get to a comic accurate The Mask type situation.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I don't disagree with you. Just the way that Art like holds himself, protrudes himself, the random crap that he pulls out of his bag. Like, he has handmade nine tails, which entire thing isn't to kill, it's just to cause pain.
Yeah, and it's all about his thing. He finds enjoyment in this. He loves every bit, so he's doing everything he can to make it even worse on somebody, because that's what brings more enjoyment to him. He wants to make people suffer, not for any actual motive other than pure he finds it fun.
Yeah, honestly,
like,
it truly is.
And like I was saying, like, he's the closest thing we're ever going to get to a depiction of the the comic accurate Mask, because he's doing all these things that you kind of expect a cartoon to do.
That is true.
Yeah,
Like he did.
like he
You're right. He did pull a literal full ass Tommy gun out of a garbage bag.
yeah. I we'll get to that in a minute.
So
But
before we jump into like obviously the until the third movie, in my personal opinion, the most messed up kill in the series of Terrifier 1 and 2, Salt and Bleach, as you so graciously put it. There are a lot of theories that spawned from Terrifier 2, and there's one that I want to dive into, and I want to get your opinion on it, and then we can jump into that kill scene. Um, so one of the biggest theories of Terrifier when it was just Terrifier 1 and 2, and honestly, I'm pretty sure the thought is still circling for things that happened in Terrifier 3, was that Art the Clown is Sienna's father. And there's a few different things that like allude to this, but not directly. Like in Terrifier 2, Brooke, I think her name was Sienna's friend. Yeah, Brooke. She talked about before her boyfriend gets stabbed repeatedly in his genitals. Um, they talked about how Sienna's dad had like a brain tumor, and like towards the end of his days he started like outlashing and like exhibiting like destructive and bad behaviors that then like ended with him in a fiery car crash, and them I'm pretty sure she said unable to like find the body. So I'm
yeah,
like, or like the body was unrecognizable, not unable to find it. So I feel like the idea of Art potentially being Sienna's dad is a realistic idea, especially because of the notebook from Terrifier 2 that Jonathan finds that has like, depictions of Sienna dressed in her like warrior outfit, as well as Art the Clown years before the Art the Clown, like Terrifier 1 took place.
yeah. Um, I think at the time it was a decent enough theory just to fit that in. I'm personally a big believer when you have something that's supposed to be supernatural. Um, if it's more ambiguous, I feel like it's better because that's a big part of where the scare factor comes in, where uh it, it's where it's like it's scarier without a motive. You know,
Yeah,
if
and
I don't
I
understand
completely
why,
agree with that. Like I personally think that like there are some things that allude to Sienna's father being Art the Clown, but like I honestly don't think that that is the case. If that is the case, I will honestly be very shocked, but I personally don't think that that is the case because of, the multiple other things of the story. Like why would Art try to kill his own daughter? Why would he do this? Why would
yeah,
he do that? Like all of this crazy stuff. Why would he kill his own wife? Like why is all of this stuff, why does all this stuff take place if like he's just her dad?
yeah, that and it's I feel like it's such a big jump. I mean, maybe it's because we have more, me and you have a bit more knowledge now before we go into the third movie. Um, but I feel like at the time it was a decent enough, um, kind of like it had a little bit more uh backing behind it because there was less information out
That is
there.
true. I can agree with you on that one.
There was bigger holes to fill, so you could kind of just start throwing whatever you wanted into them.
True.
Um, and what, I think at this point I feel like, and that's another thing that we can upgrade to. The characters, I actually cared more for them in this movie. There's characters I didn't want to see to die because with the main two specifically. Um,
Sienna and Jonathan.
yeah, Sienna and Jonathan. I think having two characters with a reason you want to see these two live because we've seen what their life is like. We've seen what both of them struggle with. We've seen how what both of them enjoy as characters. with Sienna in her cosplay, um, Jonathan in his morbid curiosities,
True.
what which I find kind of funny because he's quite interested in like the true crime stuff and all the horrors behind that. But then with the first moment we see him with his friends, that kind of facade almost falls apart when he sees the dead, the was it a dead cat or like
It was a dead possum.
possum? Yeah, the possum. You
But
know, that kind
I
of
feel like there's like so of the cast of Terrifier 2, like Sienna played by Lauren Lavera, I think that's how you pronounce her last name, and then Jonathan played by Elliot Fulham. They both did a great job portraying their characters. Like I do believe that, you know, Terrifier 2 was slightly lackluster in the kill factors and whatnot that the characters went through, but overall I think that it was still a pretty good story. But it was just like as you know, we both alluded to earlier, it's very much like Damien was still trying to find the even split between you know, character driven stories and the hacker slasher whatnot of art.
yeah. And one thing I want to before we go continue further, I want to talk about just the age of specific Elliot Fulham. Like he's like the same age as us, isn't he? Like
Yeah, he's how old is he? I think he's like a year or two younger than us.
yeah, he looks. I'm not sure if it was down to like because we saw him relatively close and in person when we
I
went
I
to
I saw him in person. Like I met him.
yeah
It
when
was very brief, but I met him, you know, very lightly. But I mean, in the so how old is he? Can you just give me his age? Uh, whoa, huh? I was wrong. This man is only 18 years old. He's a
okay
child.
so when this movie was being made, so if it came out in 2000 and
It came out in 22, but the thing that we have to think about is like this movie was also like pushed back because of the pandemic. So realistically, uh, he had to have been like, you know, as of this year. Wait, no, as of this year, he's 20 years old. So he was born in September of '04. So he as of this year he's 20 years old. So this movie came out in 22. That puts him at 18, and you know this movie was filmed over, you know, around 2 years. So he was like 16, 17 years old when they were filming Terrifier 2.
yeah, that's right. Um, but being quite young, yeah, because the I'm looking at it right now. The filming began in 2019.
Yeah, so he was, you know, 15, 16 years old when the filming first began for this movie.
Yeah, and when COVID-19 hit, that's when the principal photography was halted.
Yep.
Yep. And so let me just see real quick through here. Yeah, and and then it seems like quite a bit of the movie was relatively well finished before COVID hit, other than the principal photography. And the funny thing is, he had the money backed up for the sequel already, and was able to start filming relatively decent, get started working on Terrifier 2 relatively decent after the first movie. Um, but he still opened up an Indiegogo page with a goal of $50,000.
And
Uh,
it blasted past that.
blasted past that, and that was just for one scene. And I think it's time to talk about that
Well,
scene now.
so it was for that scene, but it was also just for like special effects in general for the movie. But that scene, so Salt and Bleach, as Robert so kindly put it, is by far the most gruesome scene in that movie. Like, you know, the girl getting, you know, slashed up and or bleach poured on her and salt shoved in the wounds. It's a brutal scene.
Yeah, like and you can tell where quite a bit of that budget went into this, because we see Art rip the he quite literally rips the back off this girl. He stabs her multiple times. He rips her hand down through the forearm in trois. And
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing for me, is just seeing the hand get split. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, the hand split and like him scalping her.
Oh yeah, and he did do that too.
Yeah, he scalped this girl, and then we think that the scene is over, and like the worst part is behind us, so to speak. But then to come back with like the character's mother coming in and seeing her daughter ripped to shreds and literally like carved up, like her entire like bone on her
Yeah.
right leg was just showing, because
Yeah.
like Art
And
like carved it down and was like using her blood to like draw on the walls and shit like that.
on the walls, and he was also feasting on her flesh
Yeah,
at the same time. So this mother walked in, and she had enough life left in her to look at her mom and like
and just
call to her.
yeah, just like say it in like the like saddest tone, like of just like mom, just like trying to get it out. It was just a
And
gruesome scene.
yeah. And before we even get to that point, we saw the character that happened to, like, shitting on Art for trick or treating because she thought he was just an adult going out for trick or treating.
Yeah, which honestly, I think that derived like him being more gruesome.
It, quite possibly, yeah. I think of their. I don't think he has motives from anything, but I think her not giving him enough candy was like, it was him just like, all right,
You're
you
dead,
want to
and you're gonna die very slowly and very painfully.
no fistful of candy. I'm taking a fistful of your flesh,
Yeah, literally. But like
and
that
that
one was bad.
putting salt in the wound literally after he like rips her back off. And he like cheerfully goes to grab the salt, and he's like pushing and rubbing in.
Yeah, and like before he even like pushes and rubs it in, he's like grabbing handfuls of salt and like throwing them up into the air like they're confetti to fall on her, which is like, oh
Yeah.
my god, that sounds so painful.
Oh my God. And then the bleach, which at this point, like, I'm not the smartest out there, but what does bleach do to an open wound?
Nothing good. Like I'm pretty sure bleach is probably one of the last things that you should have in contact with an open wound.
It's it was something. That scene was something. It is by far the best scene for the kills in the movie. Well, the only one that's not Blicky related that comes close, I would have to say, has to be probably um her friend's boyfriend's poor penis.
Yeah. But so if a bleach come I just looked this up cuz like I want to know if bleach gets into a cut, severe skin irritation, chemical burns, weakening of the skin's natural barrier, increasing susceptibility to burning or tearing, and bleach burns may take up to 2 full weeks to heal. Now, in my personal opinion from watching this movie, I don't think that 2 weeks would have been long enough for this girl to heal. I
I I don't oh excuse me, I don't think there's any healing.
No,
Um
absolutely
one
not.
once once the entire skeletal system is showing on at least half of your body, I don't think there's I don't think there's any healing from that.
No.
Yeah.
Uh
But before we move on, I want to just when we want to talk exact stats, the goal for the Indiegogo was 50,000. At the end of the campaign, they reached 250,000.
yeah, it was 5 times the amount that they
Yeah.
asked for.
Yeah, like 400 and some odd percent more than the initial goal.
And honestly, like Terrifier 2, even though like in my opinion, like I stated, it was like overall weak because it wasn't fully figured out like how the balance would go. that was the movie that really put Art on the charts. Like
Yeah.
that was the movie that like pushed him into the mainstream and made him like a more prominent character
Yeah.
in the horror scene.
Yeah, because that movie was that the big thing about that movie is I think the majority of that marketing kind of came out after the movie technically released because a big driving factor of that movie's like marketing was the reaction you saw of other people who went to see the movie in theaters and like the entire claims that people said they had to leave, they were puking, they just couldn't handle the scene. That was a big determining factor, I think, that drove people to go watch this movie and started making Art the Clown something that, you know, was a bit more in the pop culture because people, you have the adults going to see this movie, people are throwing up, and you have other people out there like, if we were teenagers when this movie came out and our parents were hearing about this would be definitely a movie they wouldn't let us go watch.
Oh, absolutely. But honestly, I feel like that's a really good segue into Terrifier 3. So like we even went and saw Terrifier 3, like before it was like released to the general public, like obviously they had like a pre-showing and critic showings and whatnot. And I remember reading about it and you and I talking about it, about how Terrifier 3 was ranked like one of the grossest movies to come out in recent years, and that like it was like there were parts of it that were so bad people were throwing up, leaving the theater, and all of this stuff. And I'm bringing that up because when you and I went and saw this movie in theaters, 2 weeks ago now, I believe, we went, and in the first 10 minutes 2 people left the theater, and then
Yeah.
by the end of the movie there was another 6 or more people that left. Like like some people just can't handle this kind of gore.
And that's perfectly fine. And I will say the warnings are there for people when
Oh,
you go watch the
absolutely
movie.
they are. I
Like
mean, they have
it
to
may not
be.
be like the social media and the marketing response is one thing that's a warning. If a movie's out there and it's saying and it's telling people that hey, some people are actually throwing up during this, that's nothing to take lightly, especially if they're taking it like, seriously. And then before we went to the movie, um, we saw the right beside the door before going in, which I think is a weird way to place it. I figure they'd like somebody would maybe say something when you're
Yeah,
checking it, like when you're buying your tickets, or somebody would say something like, or they'd be on the door. But it's right there before you go into the actual like
theater.
screening room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There was like a
and
warning stating like, this movie is
yeah,
not
not
rated,
rated.
and it is very hard for certain, people to watch, and like they just can't do it.
Yeah, and that's another thing that was kind of crazy, is that these the second and third movie having theatrical releases is crazy for the sole fact that they're not rated.
Yeah,
Like
cuz they literally couldn't be.
they went around uh the rating board, which you know which I might add to you, Hatchet, the original movie, when that was not rated, I believe it was the original. AMC was going to show that movie in theaters like nationwide, but the the ratings board for the movie basically bullied the AMC theaters into not doing that.
Yeah.
So for a project that's spearheaded by one man, um, to get a national release in theaters and not being rated by the board is crazy.
It really is. It was insane. So, once again, before we jump into this more, uh, like spoiler alert, we are talking about Terrifier 3. It is still, a relatively new movie. It has been out for a couple weeks by now, but okay, so Terrifier 3, gruesome ass kills. Like, oh my god. The fact that it opens up with Art killing an entire family is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, like it is something in that. And when we talked about somebody leaving within the first 10 minutes, um, the movie doesn't show it, the action of it happening,
But it
but
shows the aftermath.
it shows the aftermath and you still hear what goes on within the room. There is a child. You don't get to see the child being butchered by Art, but it is a very quick it's framed through the perspective of this kid's little sister who is like looking up at watching Art go up the stairs and into her brother's room. The brother thinks it's his sister trying to bug him again. He gets half a sentence out before all of a sudden you hear the axe swing
Yep.
and the sounds of the axe being repeatedly swung and removed
Oh
from a
yeah.
body.
And it
It
is
is it,
whew,
it
it
is
is a
it is
wild thing.
it is gruesome to hear. It is something where another thing that I said, if this movie went to the board, it would have been thrown out at that point.
Oh yeah, 100%. But like that was extremely brutal. Them and like keeping in the fact of the brutality and like just the insanity of this movie. I mean, he kills a group of children like with a bomb. Like
Yeah, like
it's dark. Like the third Terrifier movie, in my opinion, and I believe in most people's, is by far the darkest of all of the Terrifier movies.
yeah, like this movie may be not rated, but Art's hands are rated E for everyone.
Oh, easily, this
It
man's hands are rated E for everyone.
you know
There,
it gets quite gruesome. And like when and the thing is he misses the sister, so we watch this entire basically the entire events happen, the majority of the events happen through the little girl's perspective, and we see it through the mother's perspective. um and you know and the little girl thinks she hears Santa on the roof walking around. We get to see the switch in perspective when she goes, or when she like goes to talk to the mom, says that she hears Santa and all of that, and the mom just basically trying to get her to go to back to bed. um and tells her things like, oh, it's just the elves on the roof. She goes to put out a plate of cookies, goes back up, and we see her talking with the husband, of course, tells him to make sure he eats all the cookies and stuff. They make it seem like they make the husband seem like a
kind of an
kind of a
asshole.
dick. Not even kind of. He's just a
But
dick, you know.
I mean, like, like before you like jump in and like fully explain like the entire opening sequence of the movie, uh, I feel like that should be left for people to watch. Like,
Yeah, no,
giving the little bit that you have, I feel like that is enough to be like, yeah, this is like a fucked up movie, and it really is. I mean, showing like the things that Sienna is going through, main girl, final girl, whatever you want to call her, she like in and out of psych wards and like dealing with all this other crazy stuff, and Jonathan, her brother, just trying to be normal and like trying to move on and move forward from Art the clown, just to get these like gruesome ass kills. It's just a insane thing that they hold, that Art holds dear, that is an insane premise to the whole thing.
yeah. It was quite interesting. I will say though that one thing I wish they played with a bit more. We only kind of saw like one real scene of it happening with with Victoria. Um, is when she not Victoria, Samantha. Right? What am I fucking talking about?
Yeah, who are you talking about? Are you trying to
The
talk
main, the
about
main,
main girl?
main girl. I'm bad
Sienna.
with names. Sienna. She was when we saw her come back home and she was eating dinner with her family. Um, I really wish they held more onto like the representations of her guilt for her friends and stuff and the other people that aren't killed. I really wish they showed more of that because we only got that one real scene with it. Like
That is true.
specifically specifically with her, with what she sees at that scene.
Yeah, because we only saw one scene of like her friends like battering her. The one thing that I will say, I do kind of wish that we got more of it, but I'm glad that we only saw the one friend. And the reason that I say that is because that is the only friend that she logistically would have seen. Like she wouldn't have seen, Allie, aka Salt and Bleach. They wouldn't have she wouldn't have seen her because that happened in her house. Whereas Brooke's death, she like it happened near to where Sienna was. Therefore increasing the likelihood of her running into the dead body.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very fair. But I just think that they could have had that there could have been more scenes with it.
Oh, I
Like
completely agree.
I feel like a really good representation for this is the way they used it in the fifth Scream movie with Samantha and her seeing her father. I felt like that was a really good way to use that. We got multiple scenes that happened out of nowhere, and we saw how that alluded to the character progression.
Yeah. So there's two different kills that I want to talk about for within Terrifier 3. One that I really enjoyed and one that I thought was a little lackluster. The first one that I want to talk about is the one that I thought was a little lackluster. I thought that the construction guy dying uh by just getting stabbed in the neck by Vicky, it was too swift. It was too quick. He like overall had like the closest thing to a pleasant death that this world kind of gives.
Yeah,
Like
that's very fair.
it was just like it could have been more in my opinion. Like it could have just been a little bit better.
Yeah, that's very fair. A big thing with the kill in that scene was that I think that's another scene where I at least saw one person walk out, but I think they came back was after she did that and she went up to the attic where Art was like throwing the dude around, and he finally started getting a hold of him and like
Yeah, biting his fingers off and stabbing his I think it was either his foot or his hand into the
he took yeah
ground.
he took he took like what was like a roofing, I think like a roofing nail or something like that,
I think so.
and he drove it right through the dude's hand to keep him in the floor, and then he just started. Some people talk about cracking heads. Art really went in there like it was a walnut.
Oh yeah, he really did.
Uh,
It
but
was
he
that was just a really bad like the honestly in my opinion those were the only two kills that I thought were really lackluster in this movie.
I
Besides
was
the two obvious ones that you and I shall talk about in a minute, but
I felt like it was a bit distracting because of what Victoria was doing, and it wasn't the kill itself that caused that person to leave. I think it was specifically what Victoria was doing while watching Art crack this guy's head like a walnut.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was too. But it was just a weird and kind of disturbing
Yeah.
moment with what Victoria was doing while Art was just, beating the shit out of this guy and, ripping
It,
his
it
head apart.
it definitely felt like a reference to the crucifix scene from The Exorcist.
Oh, it
Very,
heavily did.
very much so. Very much so.
Heavily. It was very, very disturbing of a scene. But the scene, the kill that I really liked, that I really, really enjoyed from Terrifier 3, besides Chainsaw Shower, as I will call that one, um, was the Santa kill. Like
Yeah.
it was such like a cold and like cold but still like funny, not like cold in the bad way, just like brutal as shit.
I thought you were using cold as a pun there.
Oh yeah, I was. Cause I mean, this man, he literally has like a tank of liquid nitrogen and just freezes this dude and then beats the shit out of him, shattering his body. Like that is
Art art
insane.
effectively art effectively made the exact opposite of a flamethrower.
Yeah, literally, it was horrifying, but it was amazing.
it was quite. I think it was my favorite. Other than a subtle one, going back to the Blickies, he upgrades from the Walmart Blicky in this one to the Glock.
Oh yeah. See the
And
if you're talking about the bartender and Smokey,
yeah,
so the only thing that I don't like about those kills is the fact that they were just rapid succession, quick as shit. That was the only thing that I feel like that I didn't
that
really
that
like.
is that was quite fair. But the reason why I'm okay with them in this sense, was because they were used as kind of like stepping stones the to Santa.
That is true, and that I will give them that. It was just like I felt like they felt more like a footnote, if you know what I mean.
Somebody,
Like it was like, oh, that random kill that happened. Yeah, anybody
I
could have shot this bartender and this random guy, but then they see, Santa Claus tied to a fucking chair, naked, and his hands are shattered and he's frozen and his legs are shattered, and then you're like, oh shit, what the hell happened over there?
yeah. Did I ever tell you who was Santa, who played Santa in that scene?
Yeah, it was Daniel Roebuck.
Yeah, in he played in The Fugitive as Deputy Marshal,
Oh
as the
yeah,
Deputy Marshal Robert Briggs, and that's the biggest thing I can think of him. Other
he
than that,
he played in a
other than
bunch
that,
of
he
different stuff.
that and he was Frankie Muniz's dad and Agent Cody Banks.
Oh my
And,
god, she was.
and that was the funniest thing I could think of, because that was what was stuck in my mind when I saw him up there. And the movie Terrifier 3 was like, it had a lot of little references to people that were in there. Um, the one nurse, I think he was in the opening scene, was Chris Jericho, wrestler.
Yep.
Um, Tom Savini made an appearance on on the TV screen. I think, trying to think about the other ones. I think Clint Howard was a reference into it too.
Yeah, Clint Howard played Smokey.
Yeah, Clint Howard was Smokey. That was quite a neat reference, especially because he's played Clint Howard played quite a few slashers, and like, or played in a pretty decent couple slashers in like the early or the early and late '90s, I think.
I believe he did, but so I feel like there's like two other things that we need to talk about for Terrifier 3, and then we can pretty much wrap this up. So
Yeah,
the shower scene, the chainsaw shower, that is something that I feel like we got to talk about. That was the equivalent to Salt and Bleach from Terrifier 2.
I think it surpassed Salt and Bleach,
Oh, easily. But like that was the
because
equivalent of like the really bad fucked up kill in Terrifier
yeah,
3.
because it's a it's a very obvious reference to Alfred Hitchcock with his shower scene. Except you replace the knife of that scene uh and Norman Bates dressed up as his mother for a clown mime dressed up as Santa Claus with a chainsaw, and you add an additional body into the works.
Yeah.
But
It was like it's a good thing. It's brutal as shit. Like, art, like the whole thing before the scene with like the chick, her name was Mia,
yep,
wanting to like meet Art and talk to him and see if there was a soul behind his eyes and like all this crap, and like Art hearing this, and then when he goes to kill her, he like grabs her face and like looks into her eyes and like widens his eyes in like a really creepy ass way that it was just
yeah,
disturbing.
yeah. It got quite disturbing there. But not only that, it was like, Art wasn't using the chainsaw either in the way you expected him to. Like, he wasn't going straight for like full cut slashes. He was like jabbing, pulling back, poking, and sticking the chainsaw. He was holding back to make it more torturous. He wasn't going he was going full throttle, while at the same time like limiting himself in that scene.
Oh, absolutely. It was an insane like scene that was. But like going from that to like him killing Mia to jumping to kill the guy's name was Cole. Killing Cole cuz like dude, the sound of the bones snapping in his leg and then Art ripping the leg off. Dude, that sound lives rent free in my head. And I hate that it
Yeah.
does cuz it is such a disturbing sound. But then him
Yeah.
going from going from ass cheeks to skull and then flipping him over and going from dick to face was just such a like with the chainsaw. It's just such a brutal kill.
Yeah, it gets it's quite bad. But and going back to it, it's like that was the scene where people were that's when we saw the majority of the people leaving the theater. And like I will say I feel like that specifically that scene was quite I don't want to say it was ruined, the experience was ruined for me, but I will say to the people who were sitting behind me
Oh
and
my
Travis,
god.
I get that it's a quite a shocking scene, but bending over almost to the next aisle and screeching was not fun for my ears.
No, dude, it wasn't fun for mine either. That was like that scene was such like a powerful scene in that movie, and like I know that that's a weird way to put that, but like it's such a powerful scene in that movie, and then for those people that were sitting behind us to lean forward and scream in our ears, it took a little bit of the immersion out of it.
I will say the only time that I ever had a worse experience in a theater than that was when we saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and the amount of people that clapped at every fucking reference.
Yeah, that one was bad. That was just oh my god, it was so ugh. That one just caused pain.
Might be a hot take here, but please do not clap in the theater.
Yeah, if the people aren't there that were in the movie, don't clap. If they're there, clap. You know, it's polite. You know, you're saying good job, whatnot. But
No,
like it's
you wait till the movie's over if they're there.
so like yeah. So there's one other thing that like I really want to bring up. And then if there's anything else that you want to add, I'm completely down for it. So
Um,
like without spoiling like big parts of the end of the movie because like I don't want to spoil like the whole story, but like I still want to talk about certain things. The last little allude to Damien at the end of the movie, I still adore that. I adore that in the like one of the last shots of the movie, it shows Art getting onto a bus, and there's a lady sitting on the bus reading a book, and the book is labeled The Ninth Circle, which is a
yep.
jump back and a callback to Damien's first directorial debut of his short, The Ninth Circle. And I feel like that was just a beautiful thing to add in there.
That it really was. It really was because and the biggest thing I think with that ending too is like you said it is almost a one-to-one callback to that to him saying about the original idea of a clown getting on like a couple stops before this woman's supposed to get off. It seems like a normal bus ride, and then it ends on with him. He goes on there upset, sad. He things didn't turn out the way he planned, and it jumps right back to him grinning from ear to ear, horn up, ready to do whatever despicable things he's planning to do on that bus.
Oh yeah, it was just a gorgeous way to end that movie. It was good. It left on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but not too bad of one, to the point where like if a fourth movie wasn't going to be made, then it wouldn't be a bad end to the trilogy. But they've already announced a fourth movie, and it's coming out in 2026.
Yeah. That's the estimate, unless that's been
Yeah, the
changed
estimate
recently.
right now is that it's coming out in 2026.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the fourth movie. I will say the third one definitely made me more of a fan of the character of Art compared to the other two. And if I had to rank the movies from the strongest to the weakest, I would have to say that three is definitely the strongest of the trilogy. I would say one is the middle ground, and then that two is my least favorite.
And I
Yeah.
completely stand with you on that. Three was just such a powerful movie in developing the idea, the character of Art the Clown, and with the gruesome kills and all of that beautiful gore and horror in the movie. It was just so well put together. Terrifier 1 is a it's good for what it is. For the budget that it was on, for all of the different things that flowed into that movie, it is overall a good movie, but definitely not as strong as 3. And 2, as I stated when we were talking about it, it was so character driven and like so out there that it didn't feel nearly as strong as Terrifier 3 or Terrifier 1.
Exactly. And and I have my gripes with each of these movies without getting into too much detail on the third one. I think I went enough into the gripes I had with the first and second. But it like I said, the third one made a fan for me out of the series. I think that these are films that I'm hoping that Hollywood itself can take a lesson from, that movies nowadays don't need to have this grand budget. They don't need to have all the money to do these special effects, and especially when they're being rushed out. I
Oh
think this
yeah.
movie shows what someone can do with a budget when they're capped on their budget and they have to get creative. You know,
And I completely agree with you on that. Like the first one definitely shows that. The second one showed it still, and the third one, they had a way bigger budget than the first or the second movie.
yeah,
Excuse me.
it was by far the biggest budget. I think as of um this past weekend, I think Terrifier 3 it was number 1 I think in the box office, which is another thing that's insane for an independent horror slasher. And I think it grossed like $44 million
As of
around
right
that.
now, and it's still in theaters
Yeah.
and still, accruing more
And
money. And
and
that's
that's just in like and that's just I believe here in the United States and Canada. I'm not even sure what else it's making worldwide.
true. And honestly, like that's a huge jump from Terrifier 2, cuz Terrifier 2 it capped out at 15.7 million dollars
Yeah.
in box
And
office.
that's not saying much either. That's not to like diss on it either, because I think Terrifier 2 it was in theaters for a very short time. Like I
Yeah.
think it was like 2 weeks at most.
I want to say maybe it was 3 or a month, but it was definitely not even close to the normal
Yeah.
like length of movies being in theaters.
Yeah. Um, yeah. It I don't think that number is accurate. The amount of people that watched it, because apparently, there's been a not an epidemic, but that's the best word I can relate it to, of like teenagers buying tickets to the Wild Robot, and the Wild Robot's getting its sales boosted because you have teenagers buying tickets to that movie and then sneaking into the theater for Terrifier 3.
Oh yeah. But
So
so
this is a win for Hollywood there.
oh yeah. But so I got one more question, and then I think it's about time to wrap it up. We have been going for almost an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you and I both being huge fans of horror and slashers and the whole 9 yards. What do you think, like scale of 1 to 10, how like what do you think you could do like surviving against Art? 1 being you die instantly, 10 being you think you have a decent chance.
Knowing the rules of this universe, I think I would, if I'm stuck with some of the decision making abilities of the people in the movie, I think my ability is I'm gonna give myself I'm gonna give myself a 3. You know, I might throw a few swings there at art, but I'm not sure how well it's gonna work.
You know what? Honestly, I'd give myself like a 3.5, maybe a 4. And the only reason that I put that above what you're saying for yourself is I'm a little bit smaller than you, and I feel like I could wiggle out of things slightly easier. And I could still throw a couple punches, but like, knowing Art and like how he does things, oh, I'm screwed. We're both screwed. We're dead.
I, all I'm saying is if you ever watched Jason Takes Manhattan, my head's rolling.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that is a good place to call this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to be posting every Thursday. We still haven't decided on a time, but whenever this one comes up, it's probably going to be around the time that the rest of them will come up. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Yes, please come back. We're desperate, please.